we're going to talk about this. Now, as I've said numerous times, black people know white people better than white people know themselves. And, when it comes to the divided lines in America, I've noticed these, themes, right? Um, Black people recognize that there is a long history of discrimination against black people. It is baked into the system and the fabric of America that is white supremacy. Your regular, everyday, average white person, they want to sit out there and they, deny it. And the overwhelming majority of white people don't even know their own white history. They don't even know, example, how the white middle class was created via FHA loans and all these housing commission acts that they threw into place and the New Deal and how the black community was distinctly disadvantaged. Although I will say the white community was also disadvantaged with blockbusting, but the black community was disadvantaged with blockbusting combined with redlining, right? And then we have the dumping of drugs in the black community. When there were thriving black communities, they were burnt down to the ground. I was watching this brother's video earlier in the day, and his whole rhetoric was typical white talking points, like black people never established anything. They never created communities and businesses for themselves. Then how do you have a history of communities and businesses being burnt down in black communities, all because of false accusations of raping a white girl, whatever they want to throw up? But that was always the go-to one, right? But I noticed that when it comes to white people, by and large, their attitude is law and order, and how, white people are just inherently good and white people are law-abiding citizens, and it's the Negroes of America that are the problem. Again, no context, right? Black people are just disproportionately poor because black people are lazy and all this other stuff that they see today. And don't get me wrong, I look at the black community and there's a lot of things that are in my community that are dysfunctional, but they're the byproduct of prolonged exposure to poverty. They're the byproduct of a legacy of discrimination and marginalization. I mean, that's like sitting there saying that, 9/11 just happened, like how the white people jump up and they say, they hate us because of who we are. They hate us because of our freedom. I'm like, no, how about like 100 years of U.S. foreign policy? As I said before, the very thing that the U.S. government is accusing Russia of doing, which is interfering in the elections, is the very thing that America has, done, throughout time in terms of, foreign policy in other countries via the CIA and all that other stuff. This is a reality, right? Because nations have interests. Nations don't have friends, right? And so you have nations that do all type of espionage. I mean, think of the word espionage. Like there's an actual word, there's terms for it, right? They found, spies from China, in America, and spies, from Russia in America. You don't think that America has spies anywhere else in the world that interfere with foreign affairs? You're delusional. Okay. So, what was the reason I brought up that point? I remember. Yeah. So, it's not as if things come out of nothing, right? There's a historical context to the things that we see today. And generally speaking, white people deny that. They ignore it. I don't know if it's an aspect of white guilt, whatever it may be. They want to act like, those people are just the way they are. They're just like that. They like to believe in this sort of divine manifestation, that groups of people are just naturally this and groups of people are naturally that. And, the environment and the situations that are created by the group that is the most dominant group that always makes sure it always gets everything, and then everybody else, gets the crumbs and the scraps, that has nothing to do with the way that people's, behaviors and whatnot are molded. As I've said, many times before, right? Your environment molds your experiences, right? Your experiences, mold your thought processes, and your thought processes mold your behavior in that order. As I've always said before, I'm like, people always want to jump out there, oh, it's black culture. I'm like, please direct me to the upper middle class black kids committing drive-bys. If I want to see dysfunctional white people, if I want to see white people with all type of problems, I'm going to go to where white people are poor. That's where I'm going to see dysfunction. That's where I'm going to see a higher rate of, fatherless homes. That's where I'm going to see a higher rate of homes where fathers are alcoholics. Or that's where I'm going to see a high rate of parents who are doing drugs. We've all seen these opioid videos of little white girls in the back seat of the car crying, and both the white parents are in the driver's seat, passed out, knocked out and everything. There's no pathology when it comes to that. When it comes to all these white people that are dying of opioids, it's like, shh, don't talk about that. Don't say nothing about that. Right? But anything, any negative thing that black people do and it's caught on camera, white people like pounce on it. Aha! And you know why they do that? They do that because they do not want to be confronted with the reality of, the system that has been created that distinctly disadvantages black people relative to white people. It's not that white people don't have any quote unquote disadvantages in this system, but it's not based on race. It's based on capitalism, right? So it's like on one level, you got the racist system, and then on another, it's like a parallel universe. Like you got the whole aspect of capitalism, right? But unfortunately in America, race and economics kind of go hand in hand. If you're the group that's disadvantaged, if you're the group that didn't have access to wealth, things like the Homestead Act, the land grab, if you were denied the first 20 years of Social Security, right? If you were always getting the crummiest jobs and the lowest paying jobs, right? If you were excluded from accumulating wealth via the equity in your home because you were denied the ability to move into certain neighborhoods because white people had covenants to keep black people out, but yet those homes were used to do things like take equity out of the home to pay for, college loans or take equity out of the home to get a business loan. This was the additional issue of redlining. Right? You can't get a loan to go and start a business if you can't get a loan from the bank. Right? But the bank already designated where you live to be undesirable, right? Only for them to later come through with eminent domain and the 1956 Highway Commission Act and basically bulldoze, huge swaths of where black people were living that, white people then later moved in and they became, the hub. They became the areas, given to realtors and friends of senators and people, in political positions of power and whatnot, right? We saw this with urban renewal. And eminent domain was the effective tool used for that, right? So, when I see all these people, like I said, Kyle Rittenhouse in that particular situation, as I showed the pictures in my community tab, those guys had weapons. They had a gun. The guy that got shot in the arm, you can blatantly see. Somebody said it was a Glock 43. It looked like a Glock 26 to me. Now, I could be wrong, but that's what it looked like to me. He's not going to get charged with murder. That's going to be self-defense. But I noticed the way everybody aligns themselves, right? So like all the white people, they automatically, Kyle, he protecting himself. And I'm saying in this case, yeah, they're right about that. But they jump on it and go to that side immediately, like a knee-jerk reflex twitch reaction, right? Because, he's white and we don't like the other side and we don't like the rioting or the protesting and all that. And so we got to go to this side, right? And then the black people, they go and they went immediately to the other side, right? Because, all this stuff that has been brought up because of George Floyd and whatnot. And, so they go to the side, with the protesters or the rioters. One thing I want to say, protesters typically protest during the day and they have signs. Rioters They riot at night. So I keep seeing a lot of these white folks that come through and they're like, riots. No, they're not protesters. They're rioters. It's a completely different group of people. Completely different group of people. You see people with signs. You're not, show me a video where people got signs and that they're holding up while they're simultaneously looting. You know what I'm saying? When you see these people looting, they're empty-handed. They don't have no signs, no nothing. How can you hold a sign and go and try to grab as much shit as possible? Right? They don't have signs saying BLM and George Floyd and all that other shit. This is a different group of people at nighttime. But I noticed that there's a lot of people, who want to conflate that. And then the other thing about black people going off and taking the side, of the people who got shot, right? I noticed a lot of black people, they got all this energy. And I'm like, do y'all not realize this is white on white violence? This ain't got shit to do with us. Every person shot, the person who shot the gun and the people who were shot at and the people who were killed, all of them were white. None of them were black. But yet black people was jumping up, just going crazy and whatnot. Right? And like I said, I'm like, I don't know why these people are out there. You got the Antifa people. Antifa is not for black empowerment. Antifa is for tearing down the system. The two guys that we know of that got shot, the what's his name, Rosenbaum, who was a registered level 3 sex offender. And then you got the other guy who I think he's like 50 years old. He got charged with burglary and all other type of shit, felony type burglary. But I'm like, yeah, these people would be anarchists and against the system and want the system to completely collapse because essentially they're honorary black people. Essentially they're outside the rungs of the system. That's what happens when you get a felony or you have a criminal record or you're a sex offender and you're invisible to society. Everything is taken away from you. You have nothing to lose. So those are the type of people that you're going to see out there, that are going to engage in the riots and engage in Antifa and these other organizations. This is what happens when, people are basically kicked out of society. Right. So, what else was I going to say? So I just noticed that, like, when it comes to a lot of the white folks, they have this, as Amazing Lucas likes to call it, this OTL, law, obey the law, law and order. They have this sort of attitude, right? And, people always talk, I always hear from white people, they always want to talk about black people are entitled. That's because you're entitled. You're entitled. Nobody is more entitled than white people, right? And so I noticed, like, there's this, black people are sick and tired of being sick and tired, generally speaking, right? When you see a black guy going off on a police officer, right, you'll hear white people, they'll jump up and they'll be like, oh, if he would only comply, right? That's what they'll say, right? Law and order. As I've said numerous times, white people love law enforcement as long as they're keeping others in check. As long as they're keeping the niggas in check, they love law enforcement. Blue lives matter. All that shit. But when the police officers confront white people and they put checks on white people, even if it is a white police officer and obviously they're also white, right? White people lose their shit. You see this with the open carry people, right? Officer Terry V. Ohio, do you suspect me of a crime? Am I being detained? Okay then, officer, well, I guess I'm free to go. AK-47 strapped to his back, right? Well, I guess I'm free to go, right? You got videos all over YouTube of white men flexing on cops, trying to push the envelope when it comes to the Second Amendment. Did you know that Ohio is an open carry state, officer? You don't know the law, right? They love to do that shit. They get off on that shit, right? But when the officers try to check these white people, they get indignant. They're like, how dare you? Like, in other words, when cops are fucking with black people, their attitude is, or our attitude is, stop fucking with me. Right? That's our attitude. Why you always fucking with me? Right? That's not white people's attitude when they get pulled over or have a gun pulled on them by police officers. When white police officers try to check them, and it's even worse if it's a black police officer. But when white police officers try to check white people, they're more offended. They're like, how dare you? Do you not? I am an upstanding white citizen. How dare you? There's the entitlement. With black people, there's no aspect of how dare you. With black people, it's here we go again. Y'all motherfuckers always doing this bullshit. Da 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 da. And I'm saying sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. Okay, I don't know if y'all saw that clip of the black. She was the district attorney. She got pulled over by a police officer. He tried to pull her over on some bullshit like some. I don't know if it was a taillight out or her tint was too dark. It was something weak. You know what I mean? She was like, can I get your badge? Like he fucked up. You know, but that was just an interesting example when the tables turn and the power dynamics turn. And ultimately, that's really what white people don't want. You know, they don't want. You know, they get triggered. You know, with I had a white colleague of mine who decided to go off on Kamala Harris. You know what was pissing me off about it? It was pissing me off is I noticed that white people always want to control both ends of the conversation. Somebody wrote a comment saying that, I think Nellie Fuller pointed that out, and they're 100% right. They want to control both ends of the conversation. And what I got pissed off about, right, is like we all got our problems with Kamala Harris, right? She's not black. She's up there. She don't know whether she want to be black today or whether she want to be Indian or whatever, right? Kamala the cop, right? You know, she didn't go in there with justice reform, was on some law and order shit, lock niggas up, all that shit. You got Joe Biden with the crime bill. Black people are like, yo, they're questioning this shit. The older generation just lost. The younger generation is like, yo, I can pull you up on Google, my nigga. Like we got all your history, everything you do. We got the facts, right? So we're not going for it. But my white colleague, he was going off, trying to tell me about, do you know, and why would black people vote for Kamala Harris? I'm like, yeah, relax. I'm like, black people, there's a lot of black people that we ain't fucking with Kamala Harris. You know what I mean? Like again, if he was in black conversations, he would know this. He would know that black people are like split, and it's really a generational thing between this whole Biden and Harris ticket, right? But no, he's not in black conversations. All he does is go and listen to Breitbart and conservative radio and Vincent James and all that other bullshit. The pink elephant or the red elephant, not the pink elephant, red elephant, right? All he does is listen to that shit. And he's in his little echo chamber, like most white folks are. Again, go and look at my subscription. I listen to all sides. I watch Fox News. I listen to Steven Crowder. What else? What else do I have? I mean, pretty much all the gun channels are conservative. So I'm saying I know what the opposition thinks. There's nothing more irritating to me than a white person that they only listen to their side about what black people think as opposed to asking the black people. That burns me up like a motherfucker. It's like, motherfucker, I study you. I know what your positions are and what you think and you fucking believe, but they don't go into black conversations and be like, oh, well, damn, this is actually more dynamic than what I thought. Yeah, if you would get out of your fucking right-wing echo chamber, maybe you would know that shit. You know what I mean? But most of them don't. Right. And I know I got a bunch of white followers that are following me now just because I ripped into Grandmaster Jay with his ignorance on, the use of an AR-15. I don't care what anybody says. The man doesn't know how to use an AR-15. OK, it's irresponsible to sit there and talk shit like you're an expert and you don't know what you're doing. And you got people going off with negligent discharge who are underneath your leadership. Right? He's the one that said, and you are to explicitly follow my commands. Well, clearly that wasn't done. if, he actually knew what he was doing. That's the problem. But I digress from that point. But now, so some of the people, they come over, they didn't even watch any of the rest of the videos. They come subscribe, I'm like, you don't even know what you're subscribing to. I got some white idiots. They come over here and they're writing comments like, you're a fucking dumbass, right? Talking about the Grandmaster Jay video. Like as though, because I understand Grandmaster Jay puts his stuff underneath multiple videos, but it's clearly they didn't listen to the entirety of the video. They think that it's just another Grandmaster Jay account that uploaded a video, which is like smart on his part, right? Because it gets around getting flagged off and all these whatever various strikes and everything, even though YouTube's policies on that have kind of changed somewhat, because before they were just flagging any and everything. It was just retarded, right? But yeah, I mean, just a lot of simple-minded people, But anyway, getting back to what I was saying, I got a clip for y'all, and this clip will demonstrate and illustrate white entitlement, and it'll illustrate, how, again, white people, they love police officers until the police officers are checking them. When they think police officers are checking other people, when they think police officers are on, their team, and there's some sort of white camaraderie that's going on, and police officers are the enforcement arm of the system of white supremacy. Oh, they're all about the blue and thin blue line and all that other stuff. I guarantee you, if you made the vast majority of cops in America black overnight and they followed the laws, to the T, I guarantee you would not see as much white support, running around screaming Blue Lives Matter. Guarantee it. Doesn't matter the fact that they're following the laws. They see a whole bunch of black faces, bunch of black law enforcement officers. You would see pushback on police officers like a motherfucker. You would see all type of ambushes on police officers like a motherfucker. That's what you would see if all the police officers suddenly became black. It wouldn't be what you see. And a lot of white folks, they want to act like black people don't see that. That we don't hear the dog whistle. We don't see the coded language. They act like we don't see it. And it's obvious. All you got to do, the shit just doesn't change overnight. All you got to do is look at the history of America. It's like the people that want to sit there and be like, and Republicans, we were the party of Lincoln, right? And they want to tell you that the parties didn't switch, right? But yet you got all the people who were in the South who were Democrats, right? Back in the day, right? They were Democrats and or Dixiecrats, as people like to call them. And they want to say that the Democrats, they were really the slave owners and, they were the racist ones and all that, right? Which they were, right? And the Republicans were the Northerners. But as I've always said, you would have to believe that all of the white Southerners moved north and became the racist Democrats in the North. You would have to have a demographic shift of people moving north, and all the Republicans, at the time of Lincoln, moved south, right? But when you talk to white Southerners, right, when you bring up the Confederate flag, what do they say? Heritage, not height. Heritage. My great, 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 great grandpappy, right? That's what they start talking about, right? How their grandfather goes out there and does this little Confederate event and everything. And we've been living in this town for 7 generations, right? They tell you 7 generations. Okay, so that means that your great, great grandpappy was a Democrat, okay? And you today are a Republican. Y'all the same white racist Southerners that or come from that same line as your great grandpappy. So when they jump up and they say these nonsensical things, I've seen so many videos of them talking this bullshit. Oh, the Democrats, and they're the real racists. They're the ones that supported the Ku Klux Klan. And again, ignore all that smoke and mirrors bullshit they're doing. Okay, it's the white Southerners are descendant of the same people who are in the South who have the same sentiments then that they do today. It's just now they're red as opposed to being freaking blue. But they carry that same generational hatred or that same generational bias or animosity, because they didn't move. They stayed exactly where they are. So I hate that type of intellectual dishonesty and arguments that people, come up with. But just watch the clip, enjoy the clip, and this is what it is. Again, when black people are getting pulled over and they getting fucked with by the police, it's because they sick and tired of being sick and tired. When white people get pulled over by the police and they get irate and all that other shit, it's not because they're sick and tired. It's because they're shocked. They're offended. How dare you? I support the Blue Lives Matter. And this guy, he's going off, calling the cop all type of pigs and everything. He even goes as far to say, I'll kill you. He goes as far to say that. And what's crazy? There's at least one time in this video where the cop could have shot him and been like, I was in fear for my life because he lunged or moved in my direction too quickly or whatever. Plain and simple. It's just, watching this is just hilarious. And on this video, you are not, if this was a black man, you would see white people writing all type of filthy comments about all these niggas and they have no respect for law enforcement and that's why we should have kept them slaves or send them back to Africa. They would be saying all type of crazy shit. Okay? But because it's this white guy, you're going to hear, this is what you're going to hear. Oh, well, the cop did pull a gun on him in front of his family. He has every right to be upset. Right? That's what you're going to hear. You're not going to hear the type of shit that you hear anytime a black person gets into it with a police officer. This guy was berating the shit out of this police officer. It's funny to watch. It's funny to watch how mad he's getting because I think he didn't have his seatbelt on or something like that. That's what the cop pulled him over for. He said something about a seatbelt, but the what do you call it? The guy, the white guy, he's just going off, just so offended and whatnot, and it's either you got to believe, the majority of white people don't support police officers, or there's a huger or bigger, not a huger, listen to me sound like Trump. There's a bigger percentage of white people who don't support law enforcement like that. I don't know, again, white people love law enforcement. They're cool with law enforcement, when they think that law enforcement is the enforcement arm of white supremacy and is keeping white interest, coveted, right? But as soon as it goes into them being checked, man, they don't like being checked. That's why you get all these white people that marched on the Michigan Capitol, because, white people are not used to not having freedom of movement. This is the what they don't, comprehend, the obliviousness to them being dominant members of society. They take it for granted. And when their freedom of movement is restricted, all this stuff with wearing a mask, right? You're seeing all these people going off and going crazy because of social distancing. Now, I'm not going to say that there hasn't been any black people who've gone off of, when it comes to social distancing. But I'm saying, we've seen the white people. Every time they talk about wearing a mask, it's, this is what about my freedom? It's like black people ain't talking about freedom when they talking about not wearing a mask. When black people don't wear a mask, 9 times out of 10 is, motherfucker, I just don't feel like it. Like, that's just what it is. But with white people, they dive into all this liberty and freedom and because they're not used to having their movement restricted. They're not used to having anybody tell them what to do. But again, when it comes to black folks, we just supposed to be used to people telling us what to do. And we supposed to be just cool with it, right? And again, going back to the white colleague that I freaking got ahead of myself, I looked at him and I was like, motherfucker, like, you've had, 44 white presidents? We've only had one biracial president. And this is what I noticed. Every time, whether it's Kamala Harris or Barack Obama, he got something to say about it. He got something to say about it that goes beyond politics. Oh, it's racist. This is racist. That and that. And I'm like, so let me get this right. So we've had nothing but white presidents, and black people were always just supposed to be just cool with that. You know, we didn't say nothing. Nobody brought up race when it was just, like growing up in the 80s and the 90s when it was like Bush and Clinton and Reagan before that and Carter before that. Like, black people wasn't like, we're not voting for the white guy. Like, no we just took it for granted. Like, the presidents are white. They've always been white. Okay, we going to vote. Whatever. But white people, you know what I mean? You get anybody in there that don't look like them, they start freaking the fuck out. They and they start running at black people and coming up with all their, ideas and conspiracy theories. And, I just think you're voting for Kamala Harris because she's black. First off, motherfucker, I ain't say nothing about voting for no goddamn Kamala Harris. No, I don't like Trump. And I think Trump is an asshole and he's incompetent and doesn't know what he's doing, which is why you got all these people in his cabinet. His cabinet's like a goddamn revolving door and shit. But besides that, I'm like, I got my issues with the Democrats. And I'm saying what I'm checking the Democrats about, even if the Democrats were for, you wouldn't like that either. So, again, I think for myself, motherfucker. Plain and simple. You know what I mean? But he's so triggered by this idea of a woman who is blackish, being in the White House. He didn't say nothing about Joe Biden until Joe Biden picked Kamala Harris. As soon as Joe Biden picked Kamala Harris, now all of a sudden he's ranting and raving and all this other shit. And the crazy thing is like, I'm saying as a black man, right? You look at the Democrats. Democrats ain't even really got anything for black men. They're all about the LGBT and, transgender and feminism and all this shit. Everything about the Democratic Party is anti-black male. It's anti-black male. It ain't for black men, right? And so like, again, black men, they use our bodies, they use our deaths, as the poster child for the movement. But whenever you talk about anything tangible and physical directly for black men in the black community, they ain't got a motherfucking thing, right? And so it's real irritating, to have somebody come through and try to tell you, that just the assumption that, and you support this and I'm like, this shit ain't even for us. You know what I'm saying? I could see if we was about to get $1 million a piece or some shit like that and motherfuckers filing complaints. I could get that. But I'm saying a Kamala Harris presidency, because let's face it, that's really what it is, because Joe Biden and his deteriorating mind isn't going to last. So I'm saying it's really a Kamala Harris president. I'm like, that ain't going to benefit black men. If anything, it'll be worse for black men. Kamala the cop and the way that she was running around locking up black men. You know what I'm saying? On top of the fact that her husband ain't even a black man. Her husband is a Jewish man. So yet again, I'm like, what is with all this anger and energy, towards, black people or black men as it pertains to Kamala Harris? You know what I mean? I'm like, this is a feminist LGBT everybody but a black man campaign. And yet he got all this energy, he got all this smoke, he got all this ranting and raving, to try to tell me, a black man, about, what he's frustrated about. And the shit ain't gonna benefit me either way. Irritating. Anyway, that is all I gotta say. That's my video, SWP out. Check out that video of I'll just play it. What am I doing? I'm telling check it out. Like I'm gonna put a link there when I got the video to play. Anyway, that's my video. I'm out.
Fuck that! Shoot me in front of my baby, you fucking pig! He said he was ready, but he doesn't care until you see something. Fucking pig! I'm on private property. I was on private property. Your ID. For what? For what? You have no right. Bullshit. I took you bullshit. That was not true. I had my seatbelt on. You fucking lying pig.
We just put up the full screen here, what he said last night.
I fucking did on the ground.
Stop! You have no right. You're on private property. making it worse.
And then you have another 16 in 2 weeks. And then, as you know, we have $200 billion in payments. And then after the $200 billion, we have $0 billion.
There's not black.
Take out your ID. You stupid fucking bitch. There's my fucking license, you piece of shit. You wanna pull a gun on me in front of my fucking kid? I'll fucking kill your fucking ass, you stupid fucking bitch.
Kids in the car.
Fuck you. Every time you're fucking